Well, whenever Nizzy's up in the air like this, it usually means that something fun is getting ready to happen. Well, in this case, what I'm about to do is not going to be a whole lot of fun, but the results of it will be fun. Yeah, that's what I'm telling myself anyway. Alright, so here we are underneath the car, and the rear suspension and rear exhaust and crap. And what we're going to be tackling today, or at least starting and trying to, is replacing that bushing on the subframe right there. That guy, and as you can see, he's well guarded. But that's the rear center subframe bushing for the differential right there. And it is blown. And the telltale sign of that, it's all that black right there on the differential cover. And that is the fluid silicone insert to that bushing. And that bushing has torn, and it's pissed out all of its fluid and silicone, just like a bad breast implant. And now our differential's flopping all over the place, causing a ton of wheel hop. And the dealer wants like $600 in labor to replace that. Well, no, I'm not paying that this time. I'm gonna save the money and put that money into something fun. So anyway, yeah, we've got the car up on jack stands. Well, you can't see that box is there. There's a jack stand back there, trust me. And we now get to disassemble the rear portion of the exhaust from that V-clamp or that V-band all the way back. And then we've got to take off this brace, and we'll probably have to take off the chassis damper, and we have to take out the sway bar, and we have to remove the axles, and we have to remove the drive shaft, and we have to remove the differential. And then we get to cut that bitch out of the car. Now it might seem a little bit daunting, but it's one of those things where it's gonna be a lot of unbolting. It's not too much work. At least the axles are literally bolted into the differential here like this. They don't slide in like in some cars, so that's good. And then same thing with the drive shaft. My carbon fiber drive shaft, as you can see, they're literally just bolted in right there. So I was gonna mark up these bolts, start taking everything out, and go from there. I wish I had another set of hands here, somebody who could actually hold the camera while I do this. Then you guys could see some of the process, but since, alas, forever alone, I can't. And this is what we're gonna be putting in there. These are new solid bushings for both the two front mounts, where it mounts to the body, and then this is the center diff mount that goes into the subframe. That's a white line, and it is a pretty heavy duty polyurethane. Sometimes poly is a little bit flexy. Not this guy, this thing is solid. So yeah, this is gonna keep that differential from flopping all around. All right, well, the midsection and rear section of the exhaust is out. There's the passenger side, and there's the driver's side. And you can see that clears up a bit of room right there. But now we've got to take out this brace, and the sway bar right there. All right, so with the exhaust out, the sway bar out, and the rear chassis reinforcement, you can see just how much more room there is now to access the differential. So now what I need to do is tie up the axle so that when I unbolt them, they don't drop down. And then unhook the sensors. There's two sensors hooked up to the differential. And then undo those bolts, undo the bolt up in here, put my jack underneath there, and then, yeah, and then we'll actually be pretty damn near taking that thing out. All right, so one thing I did to prepare for dropping down the axles and stuff, as you can see, I marked the bottom bolts so that way I can line everything back up the way it was. Doesn't really necessarily matter if the axle shaft goes back in the exact same position as it was. I mean, if you change the axle, then what, right? It's not like you know exactly which position it was if you need a new axle. But just for the sake of it, I'm doing anyway. So black paint on that, and then same thing with the drive shaft. Black paint on that bolt and nut, and on the actual drive shaft. Even though it's black, it's kind of hard to see on camera. You can see where the paint is. Just that way everything lines up. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna go around, and I'm going to, with the e-brake on, as tight as it'll go, and the car in gear, I'm gonna break loose the drive shaft bolts I can reach, and the axle bolts that I can reach. And then I'm gonna take it out of gear, put it in neutral, rotate the drive shaft, and then loosen up the rest of the bolts. And then I'm gonna tie up the axle shafts here as well. That way they don't droop down. I don't wanna put any excess wear on that U-joint in here in the axle. So yeah, that's it. And then we'll come back once the differential is ready to come out. All right, so these are gonna be really awkward to loosen up. Fortunately, my drive shaft had been removed recently when I had the transmission rebuilt and the new clutch and flywheel and slave cylinder and all that put in. So these were torqued down to spec, and they didn't have all that road grime, you know, anything keeping them shut. They were already broke loose. Same thing with the axles. The axles have been removed previously as well to have them re-lubed and stuff. To try and deal with some of the clicking noises that these cars make in the rear end. So mine weren't that hard to get off. This was still really awkward to get off though, because the position you're trying to pull at it, even though these are only like 55 foot-pounds or something like that, the position makes it weird. But before you start loosening these and placing your jack under here to support the differential, there are two sensor wires that you have to unplug. Both of them are back here on the subframe. So there's one right here. Unplug that, undo the little doohickey here that sticks into the hole, the little plastic clip. And then the other one is on this side, right below the bushing that we're gonna be replacing. And both of these just route over top of the subframe and come back down to the differential, as you can see. So you definitely wanna make sure you unhook those. Otherwise, when you go to drop your differential, you're gonna break those wires and you're gonna have a bad day. But what sucks about undoing these bolts is the fact that you have to leave the car in gear and the brake on, or the e-brake on, that way, you know, you can not have the differential turning on you. So you break loose like these three, and then these three, and then these two, and then you gotta get out of the car, take the brake off, take it out of gear, turn this by hand, kind of like you saw me doing, and then get it into position, and get back in the car, put the brake on, put it back in gear, come back under the car, break them loose. Yeah, it all kind of sucks, but it's part of the job and part of having to do it on the ground, I guess. Although if it were on a lift, it'd be even harder because you have to bring the car down to get in it. So I guess there's some benefits to working on the ground. All right, so I had to take off the chassis damper here because to get my 17 millimeter 6-point half-inch deep well up inside there to release that bolt, the chassis damper right here was in the way. So I just went ahead and removed that. 2 bolts, easy peasy. So one more thing to keep in mind too, you can see the cables where they go over the top of the subframe. They are also mounted down, both of them with plastic tabs into the subframe, so you want to keep that in mind. Unplug those before you pull it down. The other thing is, there is a breather tube. See if you can see, right there. There is a breather tube hooked up to the top of the differential. So you can drop the differential a little bit to get room to unplug that. It is on top of the subframe, so it's certainly on top of the diff, on top of the subframe, so it's gonna be hard to get to, but you do need to keep that in mind when you drop it down. Now it can be a real bitch getting that thing out, especially by yourself when you're on the ground, but I found that just lowering it a little bit at a time, scooting it back a little bit at a time. I had to move the drive shaft over to the side though, and tonight you can see it is bending that heat shield, but I'll just bend that heat shield back when I'm done. It is touching the exhaust, I'll have to fix that. But because you have to scoot the differential back, you have to put the drive shaft off to the side. We have to plug that breather hose now because we don't want to accidentally leak out our fluid. Even though I do need a differential fluid swap, I can still do it when it's in the car and I don't have it now. But you can see just how much of that fluid from that bushing leaked out all over the differential cover. Yeah, that sucks. So now what we have to do, we have to get these bushings out right here, these front bushings. And I hear these can be a bitch, but I guess we'll see, I don't know. All right, so once the diff is out, you can see there's all kinds of room for activities here. It takes up all this space. So this is the bushing we want to get out. Now, pressing this out with the subframe in the car is not going to be very easy. So we are going to do the drill method. We are going to drill out as much of the rubber as we possibly can. And then we are going to punch that out. And then we're going to take a reciprocating saw and literally cut a slice into the sleeve. Take a hammer and a screwdriver, bend it up, and then we can literally pop it out. All right, so that was a complete bitch. This is the core to that bushing we had to drill out and cut and stuff. The thing is, it's not just rubber. It's rubber. There's also some plastic channels in there and a metal core. But drilling around it was a hell of a bitch. Now, as you can see in here, there's a lot of junk still in there. But what we're going to do now is we are literally going to take a Sawzall, and we are going to cut through this metal piece right here to make it so that we can fold it up and then punch it out. Yeah, not looking forward to that either. Hooray! This mess. Okay, so this basically goes in there facing like that. We're gonna go in from this side and put a little bit of lithium grease on the outside here so it can slide it a little bit easier. And then we are going to assemble this sort of a homebrew makeshift pulley puller. Actually, it's not a pulley puller, it's a bushing puller. But it's gonna go through like this. And then I'm gonna have to use my longer screw. Oh well, I have a long one just for that reason. But then this is gonna go right here like that. And then we are going to put a nut on this end, tighten it down, and it's gonna just pull it in. And that's it. We pull it in until this part right here is flush with the subframe. A really bad day. Alright, so it looks like our little homebrew method did work. Had to put some washers on here to reinforce this thing. As you can see, it was starting to bend a little bit. However, there it is. That, my friends, has saved me $500 in labor. And now the rear end's not going to move around no more. So the subframe part, which is the scariest and most difficult part, is now done. I have an incredible sense of accomplishment. A little bit of tingling. I might be having a stroke as well. Anyway, the subframe part is done. Now it's time to put the bushings in the actual differential itself. I don't feel like losing all of my differential fluid, even though it could stand to have the differential fluid replaced. So what we're doing is I just got some fuel line and made a cap here to literally cap that off. So I'm just gonna, that's not gonna go anywhere. So yeah, that's good enough to cap that off so that we don't lose any fluid. I'm gonna tighten that up with wrenches. Then we can flip this guy upside down and bang these out. That's how you remove a bushing. On the other side. So the nice thing about the new bushings is they literally go together like a sandwich. I like sandwiches. So I actually have to press this in. The little end goes on the top. Remember, right now it's upside down, so it's like that. Again, on this side, geez, my phone is going crazy over there. Ka-ding, bing. Email, text, text, email, text. Grease up the insert. Slide her in. Just a slide her in. There we go. That one is now installed. Bam! Solid bushings, bitch. So yeah, getting the differential back in place isn't that hard when you have extra hands. Like earlier when I was doing it by myself, man, that sucked getting it out. So I had one person just kind of controlling the jack up and down while I was guiding it here, and obviously the third person was just in there working the camera. But yeah, this is now 100% reverse order from what I've already showed you guys. And that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna put it back together, and then hopefully it won't take too long, and we'll see how it feels. All right, guys, so that's pretty much it. It takes a lot longer to do these types of jobs while doing video of it at the same time. This one took me pretty much all day except for a lunch break. 2 trips to the store today and tech talk. But anyway, yeah, it goes back together exactly the reverse order as I showed you as it comes apart. Just double check, make sure everything's tight. And that's it. I'm not gonna drop it down and drive it tonight. The baby's already asleep and it's just way too loud to start this car and it will wake her up. But yeah, that's it. It's important to be able to work on your own cars, in my opinion, because you can save so much money. Like I said, this would have been $600 in labor. And yeah, the dealership could have done it in a quarter of the time it took me. But then again, I had fun tearing this all apart, getting to know more about the car itself and the way it works and it's put together. And now I know next time I need to do something exactly what has to come out. Like I know what needs to come out to do sway bars. I know what needs to come out to do end links and you know, the exhaust and all that stuff. So that's it. Anyway, guys, hope you've enjoyed today's video. I got it done in 1 day, which is, I actually slated 2 days to do this. I expected to finish it up tomorrow. Got it done in 1. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next car video. I know I still owe you a video about the rear suspension half going together, the one that Coconut Monkey helped me shoot. I'm still just waiting for final thoughts on the suspension. I still have some a bushing back there, and it's like non-stop ending with bushings on this. It's just never ending with bushings on this car. It's like that with every car, though. You start beefing up the suspension, the bushings are always become the weak link. But anyway, I promise the part 2 of the suspension is coming. I wanted to do more of a review of the suspension too and talk about what changed with the car. Anyway, time to go, guys. Get out of here. I'll see you in the next one.